Hi guys, it's Angela. So today, as I was going out to my local shops, I saw a group of Jehovah's Witnesses doing their preaching work, and it just got me to thinking about what the purpose is of their preaching activity and why Jehovah's Witnesses insist on doing it in the way that they do. And when I was a Jehovah's Witness over 30 years ago, we were told that as Christians, as Jehovah's Witnesses, we had to follow Jesus's example, and Jesus's example was that of going out and preaching the good news of the kingdom and letting people know about his heavenly Father Jehovah. And we were told that Jesus went for miles and miles and miles in his area to preach the good news. He spoke to people in large crowds, he went to individuals, and wherever he went he was able to share his message. And I thought, fair enough, but as Jehovah's Witnesses living in the modern age, things have advanced, and it just got me to thinking why Jehovah's Witnesses insist on going from door to door as being their main source of preaching. Now, Jehovah's Witnesses will, I'm sure, say that they do other forms of witnessing, and it's not just going from door to door. And in recent years we've seen the increase in the cart ministry, which is them standing on the street corner or in a shopping centre or somewhere where they are anticipating lots of people to be, and they stand there and they distribute their literature. And I said once to a member of my family who is still a Jehovah's Witness, I don't question why Jehovah's Witnesses use this form of communicating, because whenever I see them stood at the carts, people tend to just walk by and they don't often engage lots of people. People will either ignore them, walk by, or if they do stop and engage somebody, it's literally for a few minutes. And having been away out of the organisation for many years, I just wanted to know how effective this method is and why we don't see as many Jehovah's Witnesses going door to door. And the response was that the reason they are now doing the cart witnessing is to present themselves to people who are up and down commuting and going about their busy daily lives, because when they're going door to door, many of those people are now out at work, commuting, etc. And I was assured that the cart ministry does work, and I was like, I'm not so sure, because when I see the witnesses around, they just look so bored and nobody is taking much notice of them doing this. So that was my observations, and well, I was assured that it's working and people do come and take the literature and they're getting great results. So following on from that thought, when I was a witness, I used to always question why the emphasis was always on going door to door and preaching, whereas when I was at school with lots of Christians. I went to an all-girls school, and I associated with lots of Christian girls, and they did a Christian ministry, but I used to be so jealous, because their Christian ministry always seemed to be much more exciting than what I, as a Jehovah's Witness, was doing. And their Christian ministry involved music, and in fact, some of the girls in my school formed a gospel choir, and they actually recorded an album, and they saw that as part of their ministry. So they would get involved in music, playing musical instruments, writing songs, singing. Other people got involved in theatre and drama, acting, writing, and it became so, and I used to say, I was so envious, because I was like, wow, this is so exciting. I want to be part of that ministry, because there was always doing activities. But no, my ministry as a Jehovah's Witness was going out on a bleak, cold Saturday morning for 2 or 3 hours, knocking doors and getting the door slammed in my face because nobody was interested. And one of the things that Jehovah's Witnesses don't acknowledge and don't realise, in my opinion, is that different people learn in different ways, and different approaches work with different people. But again, Jehovah's Witnesses are just so entrenched in this very, in my opinion, very old-fashioned view. It's very much like we can only do the ministry in this format, going door to door. Now we're getting a bit adventurous and we're going out doing cart ministry. And the other thing was, if you were sick or you're elderly and you can't physically get involved in that, then, you know, perhaps you could pick up the telephone and call people, or write a letter, or send an email or something. And it's interesting that with the rise of social media, that I'm just observing more and more Jehovah's Witnesses, or people claiming to be Jehovah's Witnesses, voicing their opinions and supporting the Jehovah's Witness religion and belief. And it makes me wonder sometimes when I see comments on YouTube videos or on Facebook pages, etc., and people are defending the Jehovah's Witness beliefs and faith. It actually makes me wonder, is this now a new form of ministry? Are Jehovah's Witnesses watching videos and reading social media posts and making comments and actually counting that as time towards their ministry? Now, I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me. It really wouldn't surprise me if people are doing that. And and it's interesting, because I personally found the pressure was put on people to go out and do as much as they possibly can in the ministry, to the point where they were to take menial jobs so they can dedicate more time out in the ministry. They had to reduce their recreational time and their social activities so they can do more in the ministry, reduce their hours at work so they could do more in the ministry. And there was all this pressure put on people, and myself when I was a witness, to do more and more and more. And it's interesting that whilst the organisation was encouraging people to do more in the ministry, they're also encouraging them to contribute more money too. So individuals are constantly in a state of poverty, because they're not encouraged to work full-time. They're encouraged to work part-time in menial jobs, so they can't advance themselves. So they're going to be earning less money, and yet the organisation wants them to contribute money. And when I was growing, and I don't, as I say, I've been gone now for over 30 years, but when I was a Jehovah's Witness, the motto was, make your life simple, keep your life simple. And they really were promoting living a simple life. You know, reduce as many of your outgoings as possible, reduce the amount of hours that you get tied up in work and social activities, and you don't spend time reading books other than our books. You know, don't get involved in activities other than the activities that we suggest. Keep your life simple. And that really was the focus. Keep it simple so that you have more time to spend out in the ministry. So yeah, that just came to mind as an interesting thought, and I'm sure there's some Jehovah's Witnesses who are watching this video, and perhaps you can share with me whether that motto is still the same, whether people are still encouraged to keep their life simple, and for what purpose. So just picking back up on my earlier thoughts about the ministry, and you know, for me there were different ways of doing ministries, because not everybody is going to be receptive to a magazine, or somebody knocking the door, or somebody, you know, being offered a magazine at a cart. Not everybody's going to be receptive to that. And in my view, I think that's just a very dated and old-fashioned way of conducting a ministry. So a few years after I left the Witness organisation, I still had this need and this desire to worship God, the Almighty, the Divine, the Creator of the universe. I really had this desire in me, and I really wanted to get to know the Almighty, not the God of the Jehovah's Witnesses, not the God of a cult, not the God of religion, but I really wanted to get to know the Creator of the universe. And I started going along to a church. It was, you know, a charismatic church, and this was at the height of my illness. I suffer with a condition called lupus. I will put a link in the description below if you've not had a chance to have a look at my video on that subject. And so it was at the height of my health challenge with lupus, and I'd come very close to death on a number of occasions, but in particular very close, and I was desperately ill when I was diagnosed with lupus. And as I was recovering from that massive health setback, I just had this need to worship God. And so I started going along to a charismatic church, and and my eyes were just opened wide, because the way that they encouraged you to worship God and to get to know God was with no limits. And one Sunday, the pastor of the church expressly stated to the congregation, she says, be cautious, be aware, and avoid any organisation, religion or person that tells you that you have to worship God this way, that way or the other way. She said, if somebody tells you only this is acceptable to God, then walk away. She says, when people are putting down rules that this is pleasing to God and that's not pleasing to God, she says, have a very wide open mind. And I really agreed with her in that respect. And that reminded me of all the man-made rules set by Jehovah's Witness. And you know, it's really interesting as I mention it, because what I find is that Jehovah's Witnesses, and I did it myself, I'll put my hands up to this, Jehovah's Witnesses will defend their organisation, the governing body, the elders, the congregation, their brothers and sisters, and all these man-made rules, they will defend them to the hilt. But at any given moment, they themselves will be marked, they'll be shunned, they'll be disfellowshipped, they'll be excommunicated out of the organisation. And the same people that they were defending don't want to know them. So, you know, that's just a little thought for anybody who's watching this who is a staunch Jehovah's Witness. Just bear that in mind. You will defend them, but yet at a moment's notice they will deny you. They won't even look at you in the streets. But yeah, again, back to my point. Sorry, I keep straying from my point of the ministry. So when I started going along to this church, it opened my mind enormously, because they were teaching that there are so many ways to have a ministry, and your ministry could be anything that you're passionate about, and you can use that passion to let people know about the glory of God. And some things, just as an example, that people in the church did as their personal ministry was music. So, you know, there were people with amazing talents in singing, and, you know, they used to sing in the church. They went out and did concerts, and by doing this they brought many people to get to know God through their music. Then you had people who were talented drummers and musicians. Again, you know, there were many people who came to know God through this method. Then the church had developed its own community care home, and people from the wider community, not just people in the church, but anybody in the community who needed care facilities, residential care facilities as they were getting older, could use those facilities. And you would rent a property in the same way that any nursing home or residential home would offer those services. But many of the workers were all Christians, and this is how they showed their love and expressed their faith and shared their faith and their knowledge by showing love to others. The church also had a youth ministry. They used to work with young people from the church and in the community. They used to put on activities for them. They used to support them in all sorts of things. They used to have weekends away and, you know, all sorts of things to support young people. And through this, the church was actually very buoyant with young teenagers who, because of this kindness and because of the love shown to them, came to know God through that message, through that ministry. There were also ministries for the elderly, for the sick, for single parents, for men, for women, all sorts of fellowship groups that the church used to run. So it was absolutely wonderful to see that. And in fact, the church that I used to go to, it got so big in such a short time. On the Sundays, we used to have over 1,000 people attending this church. And it got so big that the church had to split and have different groups in different parts of the city. And that was because they were out in the community working with people, homeless people, going into hospitals and visiting sick people and sharing their message. They were working with single parents and children and going into after school clubs and all sorts of wonderful things. And this is how, because they were teaching and sharing the message of Jesus and the Bible, the congregation grew. And I used to sit and I used to look and think, wow, what a contrast, what a massive contrast. And we know that the Jehovah's Witnesses are in decline and people are waking up and leaving for all sorts of reasons. But we also see, and you know, Jehovah's Witnesses are quick to tell you that churches are in decline. Well, you know, maybe traditional churches are, but there is a massive global growth in what I call charismatic churches, and this is where you have charismatic leaders and teachers, and they're sharing the ministry in a different and alternative way. And these churches are on the increase, and they are growing. So, you know, for me, it was just so interesting that as a Jehovah's Witness, I was taught that the only way to spread the message of Jesus and the good news of God's kingdom is to go door to door, etc. And I know, before the Jehovah's Witnesses jump on me, I know that the Bible does say that this is what Jesus did. But then, you know, I do question my family and say, well, does that literally mean going from door to door, knocking physically people's doors? Or does it mean going door to door to visit people in different settings, in settings where they will be receptive? There are different interpretations and understanding of going from door to door, you know. It doesn't necessarily mean literally. And I think this is where Jehovah's Witnesses are very limited and narrow in their thinking and in their view. But you know what? Everything's for a reason. Everything's for a reason, because, you know, that message that they bring, that Jehovah's Witnesses bring, is not a good message. It doesn't serve people in the long run. It destroys families. It destroys lives. It's killing people. So it probably is a good thing that they are sticking to their own traditional ways and people are not getting to hear their message. And yeah, and using the Watchtower and their magazines and their books. Again, so many people have woke up and realised, again, that's not, you know, not everybody wants to read a magazine, but so many people love music and will listen to music. And when I mean music, I don't mean the Kingdom melodies, which, you know, yeah, they absolutely, in fact, you know, as I say, I still have relatives that are Jehovah's Witnesses, and when I went to visit them, we were talking, because we do talk about, you know, growing up as witnesses and the Bible and stuff. You know, they know that they can't and will never indoctrinate me, and they know that I will never ever go back to their meetings, but we do have the conversation, and my family members are sensible in that they don't shun me, and in their view, because I've not been disfellowshipped or disassociated or anything like that, then we do talk. So, you know, this family member of mine was trying to share with me that the music and the Kingdom melodies are now really modern and funky and up to date, and I was like, seriously? So this one member of my family put on one of the Kingdom melodies, and in her opinion it had a very Caribbean you know, calypso vibe, and I was like, I've got to hear this. And she showed me on her iPad, and I was like, I don't know what kind of calypso you've been listening to, but no, absolutely no. And so, and I know everybody's view and everybody's take is different, but their music does absolutely nothing for me, absolutely nothing. But yeah, there's different ways of doing ministries. I mean, I know a lady who has a ministry, a Christian ministry, through design and making beautiful sterling silver jewellery. and each piece of jewellery is about a story related to Jesus. So for example, she will make a fish, a piece of jewellery in the shape of a fish, and with that comes a little card that tells about Jesus feeding, you know, the crowd with fishes and loaves. And her work is absolutely stunning, absolutely gorgeous. And through her ministry, and she's been running this business for about 15 years, and through that, through her work, she's been able to help so many people come to know Jesus. So yeah, you know, it's just, I just feel that the Jehovah's Witnesses method is very dated. But the other thing about that is it puts heavy obligation on people, on families, on the elderly, on the sick. There is this obligation and this level of guilt. And I know that when my mother became ill and she couldn't go out in the ministry, she carried a huge amount of guilt with her, and she did feel really bad that she wasn't able to go walking and going door to door. And I used to say to her, you know what, don't feel guilty. Nobody should ever make you feel guilty, because your relationship is with God, not with man. And God is not interested in whether you've, in counting time. God is so almighty, he's so powerful, he's so divine. He is not interested in how many hours you can clock up in a month. He just isn't. And, you know, I used to share this with her and she used to feel a little bit better, but, you know, the guilt was still there. And I said, no, you know, if you imagine, and this for me is what really upsets me about the Jehovah's Witness organisation, is if you think about it, God is so powerful, he is so almighty, he is so great. And the Bible even tells us that to him, we're like a grain of sand. We're, you know, we're nothing. We're a grain of sand. So if you look at the beach and you look at a portion of sand, us as humans looking down at that sand, each grain is so minute. It's on its own, it's insignificant. On its own, it's insignificant. So can you imagine the Almighty, the divine, the creator of the universe, the all-powerful, looking down and saying, oh yeah, you know, Sue Jones hasn't made her time this month. She hasn't put in the effort this month. How many magazines has she placed? Not enough. She hasn't been to meetings this week. She hasn't studied her Bible. Seriously, people, seriously, I'm levelling with you now. Do you seriously think that the Almighty, the most powerful being in the universe, is concerned with that? And, you know, it was me really starting to think about that started to free my mind. It started to free my mind. And I used to think, well, surely the all-powerful, the Almighty, isn't concerned as to, you know, whether I'm wearing a long skirt or short skirt to the meetings, whether I'm wearing trousers or my tight pants, Tony Morris. You know, God isn't interested in that. He says, render your hearts, not your garments. He isn't interested in your clothes, what job you do to feed your family. He isn't interested. He isn't interested at all. So those thoughts started to free my mind, and it started to help me think, actually, these rules are not coming from God. They're actually coming from man. They're coming from a group of controlling, evil, demonic and satanic people. And yes, I've said it. That's my view. That's how I feel about the governing body. They are the deceivers, and the everyday, ordinary Jehovah's Witnesses are the deceived, and the elders, the circuit overseers, district overseers, and the leadership in the local congregation, they are the henchmen. And it's got nothing to do with God. The Jehovah's Witness religion, the Watchtower cult, whatever you want to call it, has got nothing to do with the Almighty, the most powerful, the divine, nothing, the creator of the universe, nothing. It's got nothing to do with that. The Watchtower does not represent God, does not represent Jesus, does not represent anything other than a group of evil, wicked, satanic, demonic led, controlling men. Yeah, so those are my thoughts and those are my feelings, and I just don't like the way that people are made to feel guilty about doing more, and the way that people are made to feel guilty if their health and their circumstances mean that they can't do more. It's just not right. It's not right. And you know, I dedicated my life to being a Jehovah's Witness. I came out of school at 16. I got baptized in the July and straight out went and pioneered full time. And back then, this is 30 years ago, back then it was 90 hours a month I was doing in the field. I know it's changed now. I believe somebody said the other day on one of my other channels, that on one of my other videos, that it's now 70 hours a month being a full-time pioneer. And I'm like, what? What? I was doing 90 hours every month minimum. Anyway, I got over it. But yeah, you know, there is this pressure to be in poverty, to remain in poverty. You know, they make you feel bad to get an education. In fact, you're not allowed to get an education. You're not allowed to get a good paying job. You know, just do the basic, absolute basic. And even then, spend as little time as possible doing that, earning as little money as possible. Earn just enough to cover your basic needs. And once you've covered your basic needs, then give the rest of your money to us, because we need it for the preaching work. That's demonic. That's evil. That's really evil, and that's really wicked. They're not the faithful slave. They are the wicked and evil slave. So yes, you know, those are just my thoughts on having a Christian ministry. And for me, having a Christian ministry is about getting out and helping the community. I've got a lovely neighbour. She's absolutely lovely, and she's an elderly lady, and she goes to the local church. And you know, as elderly as she is, I will see her, you know, going out, having fun, meeting up with her friends. They go to the local church, they run fundraising activities, they support the schools, they support the local nurseries, and they're doing things for the community. And that's, in my opinion, is what being a Christian should be about. It's about helping others, not preaching to them, not forcing a belief and a system down their throats, and then when they don't believe in that anymore, they're shunned. That's not Christian. Jesus didn't do that. Jesus didn't force his beliefs on people, and he certainly didn't clock time. You know, he didn't clock the time and say, right, you know, I've done 2 hours and 36 minutes today in the ministry. Jesus didn't do that. So yeah, you know, and we don't have to be Christian to do good works in the community. We don't have to do that. As for me, I don't go to church anymore. I don't believe, for me personally, I see that all religions, Christian or otherwise, is man-made, and they are a form of control. I know several people have asked me this in the comments on other videos, whether I believe in God. Yes, I do believe in God. I believe in the Almighty, the universe, the creator of the universe, the all-powerful, the divine. There is a magnificent spirit that created you and I, that created the universe. I 100,000,000% believe in a higher power. Do I believe in Jesus? I believe that he did live. There is factual evidence that Jesus did walk the earth. Is he the Son of God? I don't know. I really don't know. If Jesus turned up in my local area and started saying he can turn water into wine, he can take 5 fishes and 2 loaves and feed a multitude of people, if he started saying he can raise the dead, healing the sick, curing leprosy and all of these things, if Jesus honestly turned up in my local area and started doing that, I tell you what I'd do. I would run a mile. I'd be like, nah. That man is doing some black magic. That is seriously how I feel. You know, there are people at the moment, these like magicians like David Blaine, David Copperfield, and they do all these strange, weird and wonderful things. They could say, well, I'm the Son of God. You know, they can do all these strange things. Would you believe for a second that they're the Son of God? So for me personally, the jury is out on that, whether Jesus is the Son of God. But I know that he lived. There is factual evidence of that. Do I believe in the Bible? I believe that the Bible is a fantastic book for guidance and to live by. A lot of our laws are based on Bible principles. I believe that the Bible gives us good solid guidance and background on just how to live generally. So yeah, I think it's a fantastic book. But in saying that, you don't need the Bible. I don't believe you need the Bible to be a good person. Why do you need the Bible to tell you that you need to help your fellow man? If you see your neighbour in need, why do you need the Bible to say, you know, you should help them, you should feed? Why do you need the Bible to say, don't kill your neighbour? So a lot of the principles are common sense, to me anyway, but in saying that, I do believe that the Bible is a good guide and has some great principles to live by. Is the Bible the Word of God? I don't believe that. I believe that the Bible has been written by man, for men, and because it's written by imperfect men, it has a huge amount of inconsistencies. But that's fine. That's fine, because we're imperfect. We're not perfect. None of us are. Not even, people who lived hundreds of years ago who wrote the Bible, you know. So that's fine. I believe that they wrote the Bible based on their perspective, on their view of the day, and on their thoughts and their beliefs, and that's fine. So I don't believe that the Bible is the Word of God, but I do believe it is a book to live by. And I do believe that religion per se is the root of the problems that we have on the earth today. People will die for the Bible, for their Christian beliefs, their Muslim belief, their Jewish beliefs. They will die for that. And, you know, lots of people don't choose their religion. Their religion is bestowed upon them merely by where they're born. You know, if you're born in the West, you're more likely to be Christian. If you're born in India, you're likely to be one of the Asian beliefs, Hindu, Muslim, Sikh. If you're born in Israel, Palestinian area, you're likely to be a Jew. So lots of people don't choose their beliefs. Their beliefs are bestowed upon them by the place that they're born in the world, and also their family traditions and their family's beliefs. And again, that's absolutely fine. I have no problem with that. But when it comes to people fighting over a book that has been written by man, and over religion, claiming that God is on, you know, their side and not that side, or my God's better than your God. No, that is where we have the problems in the earth today. So yeah, I believe in a higher power, the Almighty, the Divine. The jury is out on Jesus. I'm not saying that I definitely don't believe in Jesus, but, you know, I want further evidence that he is the Son of God. And I believe in the Bible as a book of good guidance, but I don't believe that it's written by God. So, yeah, that's where I stand on that matter. So I've been rambling. I know I've been rambling, but as I say, you know, this is therapy for me. I'm deprogramming and getting back to being me. After, you know, suffering a lot of mind control and damage, and having my inner being suppressed. So yeah, I'm rambling, but I'm, you know, expressing at the same time. So thank you if you've got this far. If you've got this far listening to me, thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate it. But guys, I'm going to end it there now, because I need to have a cup of tea. You know, us English girls, we love our tea, so I need to have a cuppa. But listen, I read all the comments that people leave, and whether I agree with them or not, as long as they're not personal and derogatory, those personal and derogatory comments that I have had, you won't see them because I report them. So other than that, you know, if you disagree with me, that's absolutely fine. You know, we're mature human beings, we're adults. It's fine to disagree with each other. That's fine, you know. Put your comments down, and I read every single comment. That if you take the time to write it, I will give due consideration and due respect to reading your comments. So I do read every comment that I get. So yeah, and if you agree with me, then let me know, you know, what parts you agree with me. So, you know, I'm open to hearing people's views, but keep it clean and no derogatory comments. But yeah, other than that, yeah, let me know what your thoughts are. So guys, if you haven't subscribed, then please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. And if you have previously subscribed, then thank you so much for coming back and watching. So guys, have a great day, and I will see you soon. Take care now.